Hello, everyone. Hi, it's Michelle Howe coming to you today with a very special interview with a lovely lady named Sheila Tillich. Hi, Sheila B. Tillich. Did I say that right?
Tillich.
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 Okay, sorry.
That's
Um,
right.
yeah, I never had said that out loud enough to get corrected. So I'm going to read a little bio about Sheila first so that you guys know a little bit about her, but you're in for a treat because we've already been talking for a while and it's been really fun. So, um, Sheila is a recovery metaphysician and a galactic grandmother. She awakens and aligns. What she does is she helps you awaken and align with your true self so you can live the purposeful life you were made for. Her healing practice creates a powerful electromagnetic change in the body. As a metaphysical minister and healer, it is Sheila's mission to create a space of God consciousness energy that supports your healing. In this space, she works to merge your human energy field with the consciousness or energy of God. Tune in for free as Sheila shares transmissions from the Galactic Star Mothers and hosts a regular podcast called Serendipity with Sheila. She's also the host of Lightworkers Connection Circle. And you can learn more at www.sheilatillich.com. Sorry.
Sorry, it's spelled Tillich though. .com. It's German. You got
Right.
it
No,
right.
I found that more than once, like when I do these interviews, I start because this is what it looks like. I start underlining, circling, and because it makes me get a flavor of you when I read this before we even meet to talk. I'm like, yes, these are the key things that need to be said. And then I start improvising as I start talking. I'm like, oh, so it's
All
okay.
right. It's all right.
Um,
It's good.
so I got to know a lot about you before we started recording. So we're gonna let the audience know a little bit more about Sheila because they haven't seeked out your whole bio on your website or anything like that. But Sheila, we're talking at empaths here. Tell them, I mean, how do you relate with this word? Does it fit you? How does it weave with your storyline? And just tell us a little bit more about yourself when you think of the word empath. Did you always do
Oh,
you relate to that?
oh, absolutely. And when I think of empath, I think of a sensitive. I've always been sensitive, but I've also been aware. And as we talked when we first started, that I've been able to communicate with angels ever since I was a kid, and to feel things and know things. How do I know that? And I think as an empath, we know that. That's our spiritual part as a soul, is that we have, our abilities as being intuitive, kind of knowing things and sensing and feeling people. So that's what being an empath for me is getting into the energy of a person and kind of knowing things and being very sensitive around them and
Now,
feeling what they're.
as a young child, when did you, I mean, how did you squash it? Did it challenge you? Did you know what any of this was, or did you find out as you got older what how did that unravel or open up for you?
Well, my soul knew all along. I didn't know. And it's just like about 3 or 4 years ago, I remembered when I was only about 6 years old, and we lived in Tucson, Arizona at the time. And I came from a family of 8 kids. So I was number six. And I was about 6 years old. And I tell the story a lot because it really kind of helps me understand that I knew from the beginning. I knew when I could communicate with the angels, and they told me the nuns told me that I couldn't, and I could, so I had all that. But when I was around six, I was in the car with my mother, a big old Woody station wagon, and I said to her out of the blue, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, what are we here for? Why did we come? Why are we here? Where did we come from?" And she said, she pulled the car over, turned the engine off, and she turned around and she looked at me and she says, "Honey, I don't know." And so I share that as that my soul knew as a kid, and I could always feel it and know it, but also I didn't know how to use it then. And it was through many, many years of when I became a parent and when I started growing spiritually, is that it really started coming forward. And then I knew that I needed to live my path as a soul, so it started very young. I've always had it, but I really never started tapping into it until the 80s.
So
When
the
I started into the 80s, 1980, 85, matter of fact, is when I started working on myself.
so
Yeah.
in your so you were very religious at one point, right? You followed all the practical societal norms. Did you feel out of place at all growing up, or
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I'm also hard of hearing. So I've been hard of hearing since I was born. It's nerve ending damage. It's actually in my family. And I never got hearing aids until I went to nursing school in the 90s. So I was always, that's where the angels come in. I could hear them, but I couldn't hear other people. But I felt um, uh, like I wasn't heard, and also I acted as if I could hear, and but it was a time in my life that it was a growing part as a child and as a soul. And I look at it now as it really was a gift, is because I was able to hear and feel things as an empath, you know that like normal people wouldn't feel and hear. And that's what they say with people that have different challenges. They use their other abilities come through, like a sighted person, they can smell better, and unsighted, smell and stuff like that. The same with the hearing, is like I would pick up on things and feelings as an empath because I couldn't hear, on certain things. Yeah,
probably strengthened that sense to begin with because it made up for the difference? Like you couldn't hear as well, but I could feel, so I'm going to feel even more to help make up for this deficit that I have, so that
exactly.
I can function basically. So do you see that, when you look around, I almost think of empath as like a progression. When someone really is very empathic, they're very much hold a lot of positive, their energy. They have that potential to uplift and help another person. They're sensing and feeling more, almost like a progression of consciousness. But when you look around, do you think of everybody as empathic, or do you see a difference between people that are empathic and people that may not have that gift as readily accessible?
Well, I think everybody is empathic. They all have the intuition. That's the spiritual part.
Right?
However, a lot of people aren't ready to tap into that for whatever reason, you know. And that's what my role is to kind of help them look at their own life and where they're going. And as an empath, it's our abilities as a soul. So a lot of the gifts that we have as a soul, or the ESP. Years ago, we used to call it ESP. The knowing, the intuition, feelings, whatever. But now,
It's
of
all tied
course,
together the way you're looking at it. It's all tied together with how much intuition that person believes in or chooses to look at. Or so when you
yeah.
look at a group of 20, 30 people, not everyone is using their senses or their intuition at all. They're using their logical mind. I mean, most of them are relying mainly on logic, but the soul is always there. It's just, are they aware that the soul is always there?
Well, there's also the agnostics and the atheists, and that they just believe in living in the moment, and consciousness field is just here. It's like that kind of blows my mind, is that their interpretation, and they're kind of oblivious to all the other stuff. And us empaths, we pick up on that and say, well, how can you not know, But that's their life path. That's what they choose to. And a lot of people aren't. They won't become awakened or feel the things that we do. And so what is great now is that, many of us empaths are becoming awakened. We're starting to say, this is something's happening here. And they're starting to stand up. And the people that don't believe in any of this stuff are saying something definitely has changed, because we're all feeling it. We're feeling the change in the atmosphere, in the consciousness field, in society, in humanity, especially since COVID.
Well, yeah, I
Many of
think
us.
that was a huge wake-up call for people that don't believe in how feelings impact you. Well, they were all lonely at home because they weren't around other energies to help them feel either invigorated or get out of the rut of being at home. Like there's no place to hide, there's no distraction, you're home. So COVID
Exactly.
was a big teacher.
Oh, big
Um,
teacher.
you have developed yourself into a metaphysical um, healer.
Mhm.
Like you've gone through different iterations and different skills that you've developed. Tell us a little bit more about that, and what called, I mean, your soul called you there to do all those things, but you've evolved along the way through these things.
Right.
Um, so you know
Right.
the journey from that perspective. I mean, in the beginning we learn this, then we learn this, then we start really spreading our wings and doing more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we need to back it up a little bit, is because my childhood is really where it started. So my upbringing, I came from a family of 8 kids, but my parents are both active alcoholics. So I grew up in that dysfunctional environment, which left a lot of things unlearned. And developed emotionally. So I had a lot of issues in my tissues, or childhood inner child work to do, you know. And as I grew up, I got married very young. I started having children very young, but I always knew that there was more to my life than I was living, right? And so what happened in 1985, it was that I got into recovery for codependency. In other words, things that were happening in my life and how I was behaving, and I started doing something about it, you know. And at the same time, my children were teenagers at the time. My daughter was a little bit younger by that, because she was well, she wasn't even born yet. She was born in '86, but that started my journey. And then what happened was, within those 8 years between 1985 until '93, I was growing, and I kept asking Spirit to show me, and I was growing, but I really wasn't being honest. And finally, 8 years later, came out of denial that I had a problem with alcohol. So I actually got into recovery as an alcoholic in 1993. And when that happened, I really had to take the blinders off and stop playing the victim role, stop blaming everybody else, and really take responsibility for myself. And that was very scary. That was very scary. It was because I lived behind that shadow, you know, blaming everybody else. And when I got into recovery, that was really the start of me growing and really standing in who I am now. Um, I got involved in AA, and AA is a spiritual program, but it deals with, you know, the things that you do, and why you do it. And I always say that, you know, alcoholism is just a symptom; it's not the cause. You know, what is the cause? You know, and a lot of it was my childhood stuff, psychosocial, how I related to things, how I didn't develop, and the choices that I made. It's all about choices, you know. And today I don't believe in labels. I don't like the word labels, you know. And society labels people, you know, and that you're less than, you know. And today I see it as I'm so grateful and a blessing in my life, to be a recovering alcoholic, as they say, recovering alcoholic. But I don't really call myself an alcoholic anymore. I'm a spiritual being living a spiritual life, you know. And that part of my journey is just part of my journey, you know. There's so many more things that are going to happen in my life,
That's
you know.
a beautiful retell of your life through
Yeah.
that phase, not a defining of your being, but a learning, a lesson, an experience that teaches you and humbles you in a lot of ways to, this is what people that go through recovery, they're going to deny. You know what I mean? You're going to go through these phases where you're not going to want to look at it, because anyone looking and listening today is going to know, geez, Sheila's a really strong woman. Geez, Sheila, codependent. Geez, Sheila in denial. Like it just doesn't make sense that that would be you.
I know. I know. A lot of people that knew me years ago and they see me now, they just, you're not the same person. I say, no, thank God. But I always say we're all miracles in construction. God's not done with us yet. Thank God. And that we all have choices and we are growing spiritually. We are growing.
But it had to take a certain amount of, first of all, surrender and fearlessness for you to, I don't want to say let your guard down, but for you to admit, to look for the help, to want to change, to then, like, almost like there has to become a point where you have no choice. The rubber meets the road here. We're going to do something.
Well, that's what happened, and a lot of people say, I just quit drinking. No, I didn't quit. I surrendered. I surrendered to the old me, and drinking was, I didn't feel pleasure for it, it didn't do what I wanted it to do, and I really had to take the blinders off and really take the responsibility for it, and it's like I surrendered to an old life, and that, then that took responsibility. Then I had to do the work, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do that. That's where I was stuck for so many years, and it took many, many years for me to get to who I am now. A lot of people say they want what I have, all right, but they're not ready to go to any length to get it, meaning they're not ready to take the work, do the work. And that's what we always say in recovery. It's like, it's many 24 hours. What does that mean? And not comparing each other, that, the first one that gets up is the one that has more sobriety for that day. And it's like in your life too, it takes a lot of work to do the work on yourself, but it's so valuable. It's so worth it. That's where the hope comes in, and one of my biggest gifts about sharing that I'm in recovery for alcoholism is that I'm allowed to be vulnerable and take the risk, to share who I really am. And then people really see that, say, how can you do that? That's being transparent. Think about it. It's being transparent and being authentic. And that's who I am today, is being authentic in my own spiritual truth of who I am, and being allowed to be transparent. You see what you get, and it's not gonna.
There is that honesty, but then there is, if you
Humility.
felt
Humility.
if you felt shame,
Humble.
guilt, anger, resentment about your past, about this experience of alcoholism that you had, about the reasons why, if you couldn't be as vulnerable or as open if every time you opened your mouth you were like tightening up and unable to really express who you are. So it's like there was a time probably you would have never said or shared all that because it was very private and very hard for you to admit that, or to share it with just anybody in the room, right? Maybe your closest friends might know. So that means you really moved past your definition or your attachment to what that actually was, to the pain of what that actually was. Because it could not have been easy for you, for any one of us, right? Who we think, we're directing, we're orchestrating this whole show. What do you mean I'm an alcoholic? What do you mean I got a problem? What do you mean? I don't feel like I can control, like I need this to numb, to feel better. Like there, but I would say there's a certain freedom that comes from that surrender and then receiving help. So there's this fight to be tough, right? I'm fine. And then there is okay, fine. Help me. So I think sometimes people, and mind you, I've had my own issues at different points, growth pains. But I think, publicly, like nobody wants to be in a position where they feel like they have lost control and they wants to admit that they need help or they want help. And even to boot, going through the process of getting that help. And I have friends who've been in Alcoholics Anonymous, is that there's a lot that goes into living that life. And a lot of people really kind of stick with that their whole lives. They're going to meetings and sessions and whatnot but you have moved beyond that. And help me understand what helped you move beyond that.
Well, what I'd like to say is that a lot of people who stop drinking don't go to Alcoholics Anonymous. That is just one way of, dealing with your recovery. But how I did it was that it was the spiritual part. I knew that I wasn't happy and I needed to do something about it. Alcoholics Anonymous actually gave me the spiritual tools to actually live it. And I was already living spiritually because I was already connected to, in my religious beliefs and stuff like that. But I needed to do more work on myself, and through that work is how I got to doing what I'm doing now, is because I was vulnerable, but I could see the pain in other people because I had the same pain. It's being in recovery is about being very emotionally intimate. All right. So when you have one person connected with another person, you connect emotionally. All right, and you're able to heal that way. And I think that's how we all are connected, that we are connected by our soul, all right, and by the pain. And really it goes to, what are we here for? That goes back to the question, what am I here for? Where do we come from? And I always knew that the angels were part of it. And I always knew that I had a reason for living the life I did. And I always knew that there was a reason why I chose to drink instead of dealing with the pain. That's where a turning point is, like, I have to do something. And I did. However, it opened up a whole nother can of worms, is my own relationship, that I had to make choices. And I did. I had to make choices. And that's hard to do when you have other people that are in your life, that it's going to affect a lot of other people. But I knew, just like, a stewardess, and when you're in the airplane, you need to put the mask on yourself first
Yeah.
before you can help anybody else. And I knew that through my childhood, I was not like my parents. But it did not stop me from, hurting my children, and that I had to take responsibility for that. And that for them to have a chance, and they were the catalysts, by the way, is why they were the
Tell me
catalysts.
more.
Yeah, they were the catalyst is why I decided to do something, is that I did not want them to have the pain that I did, you know?
You saw,
And
did you see that you were having a negative impact on them? Your choices were having a negative impact on them. Your
yeah, yeah.
relationship with your husband was having a negative impact on them. You saw that.
Right. And also is like, I finally realized that once I became an adult, I had to take the blinders off and really be responsible for myself. And the same with my children, is that I needed to really step forward and be a better role model for them before they had a chance. Now, of course, it's their decision what they do with it. That's a whole nother story. But the thing is that is about my life. Why am I here? What am I here to do? And I needed to surrender and take responsibility for myself. And that's exactly what I did, because that's what my soul wanted me to do. It was part of my role in my contract. It's part of the lessons and the wisdom that I needed to have in this lifetime, you know? And
So when you say, it's interesting, when your soul wanted you to do that, I think when the soul wants us to do that, there's no hiding. There's no hiding. There's no,
you can't.
every turn you make, that's where you land. You're faced with the same decision. What are you going to do? Start, it's almost like you're getting squeezed into going this way. No, you're going this way over here. So you surrender to it. Okay, fine. I'm just going to go that way. Does that make
Yep.
sense?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We all have choices, and our soul knows, and it's still our choice whether we want to do anything about it. A lot of us don't, and that's what I love about, being a recovery metaphysician. And then what I try to tell people, it's not about, the substances that you use or your actions. It's really about your life, about, having a more fulfilling life and a happier life. And if what you're doing isn't giving you that, then maybe you need to change, and you still need to step up to the plate, take the responsibility, and do something about it. So,
Well, and I do see so many people either not aware or just not aware of their choice, of their power, just continuing to do things the way they've always done things and getting those results. And I don't know that there's a way that slap, slap, wake up, stop changing, change this stuff up, right? I think it's a very honest thing within themselves that they, I've done this enough. I want to do almost a maturity within themselves that they want to do something different. They want to change. They're tired of what this is. Like they have to be a little bit old soul in order to want that. Otherwise, they just keep repeating the same thing they do and not thinking anything of it.
Exactly.
So
Okay.
tell me about the holistic healing, your journey along the way. Like Alcoholics Anonymous helped you. It gave you those spiritual tools, but along the way there were bumps and bruises and big movements that really shifted who you are,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Right. So I always knew that I had the spiritual component, and I when I did divorce, my ex-husband and I, we divorced, and even before we divorced, I mean, I always knew that my soul had a role, and I was involved in metaphysical readings and anything to do with psychology and how you responded to people and relationships, and I actually went to nursing school. And I never finished nursing school, by the way. I didn't share this with you, but I have 3 years for my bachelor's. And what happened was that I had an accident and I ripped the hamstring out of my right leg. And I had to stop nursing school. Yeah, so that was really hard, but it also gave me the time to really started to work on myself. I also in nursing school learned about hospice work and about helping people die, and that's when really the spiritual stuff started coming out. I started being able to communicate with spirit. So a lot of that stuff, a lot of the history on that, and I always I've had tragedy my whole life. And out of my family, there was 10 in my family. I'm the only one left. And they started dying when I was 15 years old. And I was always been able to communicate with them. And I was just floored by that. And then when I started doing hospice work, and it's like, okay, something's going on here. Something's right. So when I had to stop nursing school, I continued with hospice, and I started working in more recovery programs about the inner child work, why I did the things I did, and kind of understood myself a little bit better. And then I was able to go to school for phlebotomy, and started working at one of the major hospitals. And at the same time, living in the relationship, and it wasn't dissolved yet. It was starting to grow. And finally, in '05, I actually was able to, the marriage ended. And when that happened, I was really able to, my kids were already grown by then. I was really able to focus on my spiritual growth, my metaphysical growth. What did that mean? And I went to a mediumship school. I learned how to be a medium, and found out that I, was a medium and a healer, ever since I was a child. And I learned about this actually modality called integrated energy therapy with angels. Now, the angels were always part of my life, and so I really looked into that, and that is when I really started to evolve, because my angels started connecting to me and say, when they want to be a teacher, and I had no intention of teaching IET, and they said, "You've lived this life, you know you share what you know because you lived it." And so that's where the recovery stuff started coming into play, is that I already knew about my defects of character, or my anger and my issues and resentment and shame and all the stuff that I was carrying, why I drank in the first place, so I didn't have to feel that stuff. And then what does it mean to recover from that, you know and as I have evolved into what I do now, it's not just about isms. It is about the isms, and there's so many different types of isms, but there's so many ways of recovering, of things that no longer serve you. And so when I became a medium, I did the mediumship work and found out about IET. It's like my mediumship works through my empathic abilities, my intuition, my feelings. I know what people are feeling, and because I have a medical background, I also medically can see what's going on with a person too, which is another gift that I have, which I didn't share that about.
So
But
when you say medically, I can see what's medically going on with them. Are you able to see the energy
yeah,
body
I'm able to feel,
within their
imbalance.
body, what's going on in their body?
Yeah. Right, right, right. So as I started more healing myself, the stronger I got, and then more of the spiritual stuff started coming through of my role, as a spiritual being, the metaphysical part. There's more to me than just my body, and so that kind of awakened my role now as a galactic grandmother and as a recovering metaphysician. I was able to go to school for metaphysics and became a ordained metaphysical minister. And I also went back to school for heart math. I'm a licensed coach for heart math, helping people deal with stress and trauma. So those are kind of like all like part of the key of who I am and what I did, and where it leads me to actually my own life issues come into play, my own life challenges, and then to see this in other people, especially the physical stuff and of course the emotional stuff, and how it plays out in your life and their life. So it was part of my purpose, you know, the journey that I'm on, and I use that by doing the emotional intimacy thing, connecting from the heart center. I can feel you. I know your pain. I don't have to change your pain. I can feel your pain. You know, and connect with the soul, because that's what it's all about. We all want to be loved, and we are loved. But we want to be understood. We want to be heard. We
So
want to be
how
heard.
do you manage the connecting intimately, feeling their pain, but not absorbing their pain?
Well, that comes with practice. That comes with practice is because, everybody has to do it on their own terms, and you can't force somebody. But what you can do is you can be the conduit for them. You can be that beacon of hope, and they can see something in you. And you don't have to take on their stuff. And that's where integrated energy therapy comes in. It's about the issues in the tissues, why you do the things that you do. And a lot of times people are they want to be heard, and but they don't realize is that what they're doing is causing more problems than actually seeing for what it's like, what it is for them. um being in recovery has allowed me to be able to see things beyond what normal people would see, especially with the labels, when you talk about labels. And in how I do it in with my practice is about the education that I do have, being a metaphysical minister, and also a recovery. Where did this all start? That's what it's all about.
What you're saying is dialogue, getting to the root cause of why this is actually happening, why you feel a certain way and whatnot.
Exactly. And so I love energy psychology, and that's where all this comes from. Where did they develop or not develop? Where is the root cause from all their stuff? And that's with all of us, really, when you look at it. And people that aren't on the spiritual realm, when they're atheists or agnostics or whatever, where did that come from? And usually it's the childhood, what they were brought up with, or the pain that they had from the childhood, so they turn their back on them. And so to be able to survive, it's a survival technique.
Mm.
How do you survive? So you got to look at that. When a person doesn't want to talk about their past, and they just want to be in the moment, it's like you can see it's like that. There's a lot of pain there. It's pain, and that's what I can see, and that's what I can feel is the pain. And so you have to go back. Where did the pain come from?
But if they're not
But they're
and
not seeing it. No, they're
they're
not.
not seeing
But
it, they're not feeling it because they blocked it out, but somewhere they must feel at some point, I would imagine, a certain level of disconnection, or because you're not connecting to all of these parts of you, because human beings are supposed to feel and sense and love. There's a whole array of things that we can enjoy when we allow ourselves to step into that. So I guess I don't know agnostic or atheist very well, either description of a person, but are they, I mean, they're not depressive people, they just don't believe.
Right, right. But a lot of people that come to me, there's no coincidence that they come to me. There's a reason why. And their soul knows. Their soul knows. And that's why, with this energy that's different now, this shift of consciousness is that it's real. And people are, their soul knows, even though they might not want to recognize it, but there's no coincidence where they meet somebody. Or a lot of times, my past, people that have known me in the past, all of a sudden they reconnect me because they remember the spark, or they remember their interpretation or their connection with me, that there was something different or something special. And that's my soul. I knew how to connect. That's the empathic part about it. And now they're ready to do something about it. And I remember somebody that I used to work with at the hospital said, yeah, I remember you doing this and this, and it touched me. And all of a sudden I got triggered about that. I said, I wonder what Sheila's doing now. So that's where the soul knows. That's the no
Soul
coincidence.
wants to reconnect, and the soul wants that, whether you call it, you have to believe in something, right? We live, we die. What animates the body? What is
Yeah.
actually happening? You know what I mean? So if you allow yourself to step into that zone, you'll start to feel differently and be differently in that body.
Hmm.
Period.
Hmm.
So your experience can go from, a 2 or 3 on a scale to 10, 8, 9, 10. This is how amazing this opportunity of a life has become for me. So that's great.
Exactly.
I want to share with the audience a little bit about Lemurian sisters, Lemurian energy, this new energy that you're connected to the Lemurian sisterhood. Like I know some of our Lemurian past, I can feel some of it. I know that it's a truth from knowing, but what can you share with us about Lemuria and how that relates to people living today? What is it?
Well, Lemuria, or the Lemuria, is actually the first civilization that we had as humans. All right. And it's in Hawaii. And a lot of people, are picking up this energy, Lemurian crystals, and what does it mean? Basically, it's about the higher consciousness. It's about our spiritual consciousness, who we are as souls. Right. And many of us, because of this energy, has been changing. And it has been changing since 2012, and way before that, by the way, 1987, where the magnetic field of the earth is changing. All right. And that's what we're feeling. That's the energy dynamic that we're feeling. And 2012 was the halfway point of this actual magnetic change of the earth. Lemuria has a lot to do with it, is because in Lemuria is where we as humans got our spiritual DNA that we have. That's our multidimensional DNA that is awakened right now. And that's why there's no coincidences. People are, starting to feel this. Lemurian sisterhood was about women that have become awakened to their Akashic remembrance of living in Lemuria, about their shamanic role, about being spiritual. What does that mean? All right. So, I always knew I was a healer, and I always knew my connection to the earth, to the garden, to Mother Earth, the soil. And I was always, I knew there was something there. And I always knew that there was a connection with birthing. So I went to nursing school to be a nurse midwife, by the way, and that never happened. But what in my own evolution, what I was told, that I'm helping rebirth humanity. And what that means is, what is your spiritual connection? Who are they as souls? Right. So my spiritual connection with the galactic, we came from somewhere, we came from somewhere. And then also me as a human, how I resonate with the earth, and I feel these things. There's a big connection, and there is a big connection. And so Lemuria, when I became involved with the Lemurian Sisterhood, it kind of put it all together. And Lemurian Sisterhood is about balancing the energy here with male and female, and about the power that we have as humans.
Yeah.
So the Lemurian Sisterhood is helping other women, all right, and also men, step into the divineness. Who are we really? Where do we come from? Just like the question I asked my mother, who am I? Where do we come from? My soul knew, but I didn't as a child. Now I know. And so the Lemurian Sisterhood, I was a authorized host for over 5 years. And that was with the Cryon team, Lee Carroll, who channels Cryon. So it was part of my journey, but my soul knew that there was more to me. And that's where being a galactic grandmother comes into play. All of my experiences that I've had in this lifetime and the other lifetimes too is coming into play now with my ability, my metaphysical ability to be able to tap into consciousness and feelings and stuff like that. So Lemuria was when, as a soul, I got the DNA that I have now, the 24th multidimensional DNA. You can't see. A lot of us are feeling it, all right? And it's become awakened. And so my role is to help others rebirth that 24th ability. You're knowing, you're feeling, you're sensing, connecting with somebody on a soul level, on a heart level,
Right.
making that coherent connection in your heart. And
Yeah.
that's where the intimacy comes in. So, um,
The
so what other
24th, so how is this done? Is there a process to how you approach this with someone? The the 24th chromosome, activating
well,
that? How does that
well,
work?
right. So in my practice, and what I would do with other people is I'm a new energy educator, meaning what does that mean? It is the frequency that is out there now, the higher frequency and the lower frequency. And a lot of people call it the light and the dark, the shadows and the light, or good and bad, or sin or sinner, that type of stuff. So it's your, of course, it's, your upbringing and what you believe and what's been programmed into you. So um the people that I deal with, the people that are starting to feel change in this energy, what is happening here? Things aren't the change. Nothing's the same as it was before COVID, way before COVID. All right. And society has changed, just like the commercials and the news and everything like that. And before we were so brainwashed or to believe, this is the way you do. You watch the news at 6 o'clock and all this stuff. But what happens is that it's more of the controlling mechanism, a lot of the things that they put on, to control you. And it's like, I'm not feeling really happy right now by watching the news, but why did I do that? Because that's what you always did. It's like, well, that's where you said you got to make different choices. I'm not comfortable doing that. So that's part of the new energy is that is surrendering, taking responsibility, doing different, you know, and living a more joyful life. And a lot of people are stuck. They don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
They say, I'm unhappy, but I don't know why I'm unhappy. So let's take a look at that. Well, I've got all these relationship problems, or I've got this, professional problems, my work situation or my friend situation. I'm not happy. So that's where energy psychology goes back and let's take a look at that. Why aren't you happy? Why are you feeling angry? Why are you feeling, resentful? What shame is coming out? So it's the programming that was done, or the things that they behaviors that they always did, and they start to say, I'm not happy. I need to do something. So with all the stuff that I do, whether it's metaphysically ways or whether it is scientifically ways, through heart math, it's all scientifically based as far as the chemicals in your body and how you can change the chemistry in your body. So that's more of the holistic stuff that's coming out. And alternatively, mainstream is starting to pick up on that. And they have for years by saying, do yoga, do meditation or whatever. How things, people in the medical field are starting to do integrative things. They're starting to use a little bit more than they did before. And
Yeah.
so that's where, as a holistic practitioner, that's where I can offer different help, whether it is from things that needs to be unlearned or new things to learn, how to self-regulate, your stress levels and how you deal with things and different relationships so that you can have a more peaceful life and to live a more a life. So holistically, it's the body, soul, and mind. It's everything. It's not just one thing. And medically, because I do have that medical background also, I know how the body works and what is happening, and where it started. Where did the physical stuff start? And a lot of times it's in the childhood. It's the things that were
Oh,
programmed in.
so
Yeah,
physical stuff, talking about physical health and
yeah.
people. Um, are we always talking about emotions impacting the body, or can it be chemically? Can it, all these issues that are impacting the body, is it always frequency, or is it actual hardcore chemistry? The chemistry of the
It's a
body.
combination of both. It's a combination of both. It's because chemically, what you put into your body, it chemically changes. It changes the dynamics of what's going on inside the body chemically. So a lot of times when people have physical symptoms, like let's say they have ulcers or they have colitis or they have irritable bowel syndrome. A lot of times it's from childhood stuff of not feeling worthy and not behaving a certain way, and it's the way the body responds to that environment. All right. And then as you go along in your life, I say I've always had bowel problem, I've always had indigestion problem, I've always had allergies to this or that, and really it's the way the body responds. All right, so it is a response to the things that are happening in the outside of the body besides the inside of the body. So healing is about the physical, emotional, and the mental. But a lot of times chemically, all right, so you have these symptoms, and so you have Pepto-Bismol, or you have medicine for you, all of a sudden you have ulcers or whatever. So that's a chemical that you put into the body, all right, and then it kind of changes. And so the body responds chemically, but it also responds emotionally, all right? So what I also didn't share is that when I pulled the hamstring out of my leg, I also was diagnosed with fibromyalgia.
Mhm.
Fibromyalgia, all right, is an emotional disorder that goes inward. And before 1990, they called it a mental order. They didn't think it was real, all right, because they said they suffered from, a lot of people suffered depression. Well, a lot of it is from childhood stuff, things that they couldn't change. And so it goes inside the body and causes a lot of symptoms within the body. Fibromyalgia is a multi-system syndrome, right? So it's not just, the connective tissues or the neurotransmitters in the brain, the sleep cycles, the depression, the physical touch. It has to do with a lot of different things, and it happened over a long period of time. So when we go back to the stressors, when we talked about a person that has irritable bowel or ulcers or whatever, it takes a while to build up in the body. The same with fibromyalgia. Through my own holistic work, working on myself in 2014, a rheumatologist verified that I do no longer have fibromyalgia. And she said, "What did you do?"
What did
And
you
I
do?
said, I worked on myself holistically. I started looking at those issues in the tissues. Why was I feeling? Why did I respond? Why did I do certain things? So that's where the energy psychology comes in. I looked at myself. Why was I angry? Why was I resentful? What happened to my body? I'm not being heard. I have a bellyache, whatever. So when you look at the whole enchilada, I'm talking about the whole elephant or the whole tapestry of your life. You've got all these things, that you're trying to balance, and they all come into play chemically and then emotionally. You know, emotions are in your thoughts and how you respond and what you feel and on the vibrational field. So when you talk about this body, mind, and soul, the body is affected, by the mind, the way you think, the things that you do. And then there's another component about this is that you're not alone. There's something besides you out there. And my practice is about going within and tapping into your divineness, that part of that 24th chromosome that we got, our spiritual component. We're spiritual souls, are living in a human body. I get that. I know I'm not alone. There's angels all around me. How can I use that? And what they have showed me is that I've had the power all along. It's just using it, using it. So chemically, if I put chemical stuff into my body's going to respond a certain way. Now, medical is, there's beautiful things in the medical society, you know, very, very good stuff. But there's also stuff that when you chemically put something into your body will have a built up that it won't work anymore. And then they give you another drug to do this and it changes the chemistry again. So it's a combination of what you put in your body and how you put it in your body and, you know, how you use it. And so,
And so it's very gray, it's very grayish. I mean,
oh,
there's
there's,
a mental and emotional component, and then there is the chemical component of what you're doing to your body, which I know that certain drugs or prescriptions or supplements, whatever you want to call it, are helpful. But what exactly is happening all chemistry wise when you add something else to your body? Like, I don't know that, other than listening to your own intuition, I don't know there are any hardcore fast rules. And your intuition is good, but then again, where's a doctor fall into play? Where's advice? Where's dowsing coming into play? What do you trust to
yeah.
help you? Right.
Right. Well, so that's what I did when I had that diagnosis of fibromyalgia in 1996, by the way. I said, well, wait a minute. And then first they told me I had lupus. And but it wasn't. It was a false positive test by my hepatitis series that I had when I was doing clinical nursing and stuff like that. And so I did a lot of research about what fibromyalgia was, right? So, and I knew that if I took this one drug, this is what was going to happen to my organs. This was what was going to happen. So I said, I'm not going to go the drug route. So I kind of like went on my own healing process. And my doctors came along with me because I was my own advocate. I knew that I had to stand up for myself as far as my health. And so that's where the holistic stuff came into play. That's where it's like I had to look at my emotions. Where did this come in? I wasn't comfortable. When you talked about the diagnosis of alcoholism, when I had my evaluation, they said I wasn't, congratulations, you're an alcoholic. And I said, oh, no, 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 no. You don't understand. I'm an emotional drinker. And they laughed at me and they said, well, what do you think alcoholics do? And I was very angry with that, very resentful, because you didn't have the life that I did, if you had the life that I did. But I realized that it was about emotions. And that's what connecting on emotional level is about. I can intimacy. I can see into you, see into me, intimacy. That's where the vulnerability came in. And I realized that I need help. And God sent me this person. There's no coincidence why I'm here and I talk with that person. That's where the spiritual stuff came into play. Is that I knew that there was no coincidence that I got into recovery and that I had to do what I had to do. So the connection is there. When I found out that I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and I say that like that, it's because that's what the medical field had at the time. You know,
That's
it's a
the label
combination.
they have on what that is, and they have these things to help fix what that is, but they don't know what you explored to fix what it is. They're looking at the body as a system of, let me prevent this symptom or that symptom. Hardly ever are they looking to be proactive to like stop something from happening, but they don't know the spiritual, the emotional, the mental side of it. They're not fixing that side. And even like a
Exactly.
psychologist will help you cognitively maybe address some things, but they're not thinking they're not thinking all the layers together either. They're just addressing what's going on in your head, possibly.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So I like the holistic practitioner because they're looking at all of it. But basically we all need one another because there is room for traditional blood work to help us.
Oh my goodness, yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. And also what I tell my clients, you know, it's like it's okay if you need to take, you know, medicine because I take medicine too for certain things. And thank goodness that we have the technology to know that. But I also know what, you know, the avenues that I don't want to go down. And then I have to take responsibility to work on myself, you know, like my cholesterol level, my weight level, and all that other stuff, you know, and in my family history, you know, heart disease. So that's a whole other story, you know, but it's like, yeah, I get it. I understand that.
The body is, I mean, I at one point I get the mental and I get the emotional. I actually get the spiritual pretty well, not consciously, but I get that side. But I at one point I go, I need to understand the physical better. I'm like, can you some physical stuff?
I can help you with that one.
And I'm like, what did I just ask for? Because the physical body, alignment, muscle, like all these things, could it just be a physical thing? Yeah, it could just be a physical thing, but it impacts all the others, but they are all connected. It's just
Yeah, but
like
where did the physical come from?
where,
Where did the physical, yeah.
yeah, why is something because one side of you is stronger than the other side, or what you could really look at it like I actually went to PT lately because my hips pain in
Yeah.
the I'm like, well, is this the way I'm sitting? What is this? Oh, one leg is longer. You have tension in one leg and not the other. I'm like, oh my God, like my alignment is off. I'm like, how did this happen? Like,
Well, for me, I never knew. I mean, I used to be a jogger and I had exercise addiction years and years ago. That's another ism, you know.
another thing,
But but
workaholic,
I
alcoholism, and
oh yeah, but that's what I said.
racism.
It's
What?
the ism.
It's an
It's just
ism.
the ism. It's just the way you deal with stuff, but they put labels on it, you know? So I had what I recently found out that I had scoliosis of my bottom of my spine, which I never knew. And my legs are out of alignment, which I knew that because I had orthotics for years. But there's more to it, you know, and then of course the older we get, you know, the mileage, we don't call it age, we call it mileage. My chiropractor and I call it mileage, you know, it's like, and a lot of people, when they know that I'm a healer, you know, that's what I do. They says, well, why can't you heal yourself? They don't get it that you're human.
Yes.
You're human. And you have these physical ailments because you live a human life. Okay, so you try to do this and you try to balance it with that, you know, and sometimes it doesn't work. It's like it's living a human life.
Trial and error. And I honestly think, you don't know what you don't know.
Bingo.
Period. I don't care who you are. You might think you've got everything figured out because I think a lot of us at ego, whatever you want to call it, we always think we have it figured out until we see something different or new. I mean, that's what I see the benefit in when you bring people together. I mean, I find that I can learn something from someone who is just as smart as me, but in a different way. They had a different life. They know this. I know this. They see it this way. I see it this way. It's almost like bringing all the pieces together. But the issue is not to lose yourself in the middle of that. And like when you're working from the inside, healing yourself, you're discovering who you are. I don't know that when we're raised, when we're born, that so many people are imprinting on us about everything. This is who you are. This is who you're not. You must be lazy. You must be this. Oh no, you have blue eyes. Stop crying. You're too sensitive. Like this is what actually happens. And then you, by observation as a young child, you're going to mirror and mimic what you see around you as if it's normal.
Yes, exactly.
Right. One of my good friends, she's very intelligent, I mean, I love her, but she's not necessarily in the spiritual like I am at this point. And she said to me, she goes, she's married and she had this very dysfunctional childhood. She goes, when she met her boyfriend and eventually became her husband, she was trying to fight the way she saw her parents fighting. And he looked at her going, what the hell are you doing? Why? To do that with you. Like to her, she just mirrored what she saw.
Role model. Yeah. Amen. Yeah.
So, as parents, as children who's had, like, we have to, like, we don't know better till we know better, till we see something better, or till we
Yeah.
see a mirror in front of us. Like, we attract what we need to learn. So, what was it the other day? A totally intelligent, very quick girl that used to work with me. I ran into her mother. She told me the story of what's going on with her, which isn't positive. And I'm like, so smart. I'm like, why does she pick that to marry. What? Like, and look at her. I'm like, well, her mom, like with the examples that she saw in her family weren't great. Like it kind of set her up for that. But there's contracts that you have. You know what I mean? There are other reasons, but I'm like, she needs to be like somewhere along the way, she doesn't value what, or doesn't know good from not so great. Don't go down that road with that person. Like that's not what you want. But
Well, yeah, it also could be her self-worth too, you know,
yes,
eh, self-worth and good enough, all that. When I just laugh recently at one of the funerals, I had family, three deaths in the last 3 months, and the last one was only last week. And I went somewhere, and they seen my ex-husband and I together, and they said, "I don't get it. I'm not that person that I was back then." And they can see the difference in us. But it was part of who I had to be at that time. It was the role that I had to play at that time to get to where I am now. And I get it. It's like, but sometimes we don't see that mirror. We don't see the mirror. We don't see it at all.
no, no, I
And
mean, we're all
until
there.
it's time. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
where
we're,
getting unstuck
we're all in a
is all.
trajectory of where we were raised and what we know we do from there, and then we do some more from there, and then at some point when it's time, we finally face or change or shift or another door opens. It's just life is a school. It's just not all like a fun class that you're in. Like
Exactly. Exactly. And, that's why I always like the thing about we're all students and we're all teachers, and God's not done with us yet. We're all miracles in construction, and it's like, I love helping people go back and really taking a look at their life and doing the inner child work, going back and saying, how did that affect you, and realizing that the patterns, when you were talking about your friend acting and fighting like her parents did, it was a pattern in how they behaved and what she picked up on, and it's like what was role model to her. It's like, okay, is that serving me? I remember when my daughter was a little girl, and my husband and his friends came in and they were hunting, and they came in with dirt all over the floor, and my daughter came in and she goes, "Oh, you got dirt all over the floor. Now I got to vacuum. Now I got to do that." And I turned and I looked at my husband and his friend and I said, "Do I sound like that?" And they said, "Yep." And so I role modeled that to her. It's like, oh my goodness, you don't realize that you're role
it
modeling.
makes me very self-conscious because we role model all the time. Even good, good. So it's like we're all works in progress. So
Exactly.
we don't necessarily know. And I think sometimes we don't. I'm just trying to think back. I mean, if I stop myself from speaking, like I just did what I did because this was what I did. I wasn't thinking about I'm not thinking about what I do before I do it because I'd never been a mother. I did more things right than wrong, which was good, right? But it's like no one really trains you. You need to have that wherewithal and see that. Um, and when the right time is, I did a reading on a young girl at one point, and she was telling me different things. And usually I'm using the empathy more than anything else. And she's telling, and I go, I just shook my head. I go, that's not love. That what you just explained to me is not love. So you're going down the road thinking this is love. That is not love. like, like, how did that? Because she didn't grow up with what love was. She thought
She
this
didn't know.
other version of it was love. I'm like, listen, go the other way. That's not it. So
Exactly.
it's very humbling to see, and it's harder to live through those bruises, but that's how you learn.
Right. Exactly. You didn't know what you didn't know. And what I said, I would never act and say what my parents did. Actions speak louder than words, this other stuff. And it's like, but it's true. And what I share a lot is that the older I get, the wiser my parents become. Think about that. The wiser I get, the older I get, the wiser my parents become. Because what they were saying, they were trying to say it in the best way that they knew how, even though we didn't want to mimic them or be like them, but they did have wisdom, and in the gratitude. And I am so grateful for the life that I had, and the role models that they were. And, of course, when they were alive, I couldn't appreciate them. That was the relationship. That was the contract relationship that I had. And it wasn't until afterwards, especially with the growth with me as a spiritual being, understand why, they were. And then also the mirroring. When I mirror them, or another person, where did that come from? But what is the lesson that I learned? And I'm so grateful. I'm so
It
grateful for
makes it makes it for a well-lived life when you're not bored, you're engaged, you're seeing, you're growing, you see potential, you see hope, you see joy, you live it. You know what I mean? That's the fabric of a good life.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of all the other like check the box things that we might have or we do have or whatnot, like if you're not enjoying, what are you doing?
I know. Absolutely.
So,
That's right.
Sheila, you have been amazing as a guest. I really love it. Thank you for sharing your wisdom today.
Thank you for having me on. I am so blessed. Thank you.
Yep. SheilaTillich.com if you'd like to connect with her. And till next time, audience, stay well, shine bright. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.